Hello, selectors, and welcome back to the Life Burst Podcast, where we're reviewing the centers for the new set coming out: Conflicted Diva, Confracted Diva, Something Diva, Set 8. So let's talk about the Eldoria deck. So, guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. Eldoria is not super duper strong. But there's a lot of people who like Eldoria, who's a bit of an Eldoria stand. I am too. I like that she's kind of edgelordy. So I'm kind of a fan of her. I don't want to admit that I like her style, but the punk in me loves it. So I wanted to give it the best shot I possibly could. Now, this deck is not the most interesting deck that you possibly can play. And I will openly admit that. If you look at this and you're like, that just looks like Atomic, you're right, it is Atomic. I'm not going to hide it in the slightest. It has a few interesting twists that Atomic doesn't normally have, but overall, if you were like, doesn't Deus just do this Atomic deck better? Doesn't even Tamago or Madoka do this better? The answer is yeah, probably. Like, in all seriousness, probably. But Eldoria does do a few things that I think are worth mentioning on its own. While I backed it with this very strong Atomic spine to it, there's actually a very legit reason as to why I decided Atomic was the right direction to go with Eldoria. So let's get into what Eldoria is, and we'll discuss, right? So Eldoria is a level 3 blue Elrig, which already is good for Atomic because arguably, Atomic is better in blue than it is black. There's just more blue cards that work with it. So that's one point for it already going. Its constant ability is cards in your life zone, or your life cloth and your check zone, without guard, or without life burst, gain life burst, choose one, draw a card, or enter charge 1. We'll circle back to why this is probably the most important part of the card. Even if it's the less exciting part. Its enter abilities reveal the top card of your opponent's life cloth. You may swap that card with your opponent's deck. The top card of your opponent's deck. The last ability is, once per game, crush one of your life cloth. If you do, shuffle your deck and then add the top card of your life cloth to add the card of your deck to your life cloth. So, in essence, right? Let's just talk about it. This is a very interesting card that is very much not that good. Swapping around life cloth, adding life cloth, subtracting life cloth, whatever, right? It's only good if you can do one of two things. One, play around with your life cloth, changing your life bursts to be ones that would be effective for you when the opponent attacks. Therefore, you are gaining more defense. That's not happening here. The second option is if you are gaining life cloth. At no point in time do you gain life cloth in this. For what it's worth, this is basically all modes of these things, more or less say, I don't affect the board and I don't do very much, which isn't bad because it doesn't negatively affect the board either. It gives you something, right? Some resources, but it doesn't meaningfully affect the board in the way that's helping you win the game. So when you're looking at Eldoria and you're trying to maximize its power, you shouldn't be thinking of it as an interesting card that messes around with life cloth. Instead, you should be thinking of it as a blue card that gives you enter, right? That is different than all the other blue Elrigs you could be playing right now. That's its edge, that's its niche. Is that this blue deck has more life claw, or has more enter than any other blue deck that you're going to be able to play. So when you're starting the decision on how do I play a deck that will give me more enter and is also very blue, you should be coming down to the following three sort of options. One, you are in a deck that is very enter hungry. Two, you are in a deck that is usually enter starved. Those things are two different things. One, enter hungry means you're actively trying to use more enter. The second one means that you need the enter to basically maintain a balance, and blue decks have a hard time doing that in general. Tempo decks think that sort of line. The third option is I am a deck that wants to play control, and I want to go very long, and because I have long games have less resources overall, this will give me more resources to work with. Those are the three options to go down with. I ended up, because of its action ability, which crushes one of my own life cloth, I ended up choosing the more proactive option of all of those three. The most proactive option of all of those three is I want to be enter hungry so I can do things, right? And crushing my own life cloth means I need proactive life bursts that will help me on my turn as well as hinder my opponent. So I can't run Focalore in this type of deck because that's just not going to work for it. However, having something that draws me cards and makes my opponent discard cards, that's suddenly more worth it because those are bad on your opponent's turn, basically, but really good on your turn. So that's where I ended up wanting to be in the Atomic Signy stuff, because the Atomic stuff is a little enter starved, right? They want to see Atomic stuff in their enter to pay for stuff, plus they need to hit certain thresholds that are a little harder. But they also have really good proactive life bursts, right? So let's just talk about those life bursts, right? We've got Servant, of course, Random Drain, which arguably is one of the worst ones, but it makes your opponent discard a card, so it kind of makes up for itself. Anna Mirage, which allows you to basically get a card from your trash and put it on the field, or your hand, which will allow you to really recur your trash. Exia, which is not so great here, but it does let you draw a card. You've got GA, which is actually fantastic on your turn. Drawing 2 extra cards and making the opponent discard a card is just a better random drain because it's free. H2O, also really good, allows you to draw 2 cards. And then the last one here is an Umir. I just had an extra slot open. This is the Hanyo Life Burst. You get to look at the top 3, put 1 from your hand, put it into the field or your hand. That's great. Allows you this all basically gives you the ability to filter and play more quickly, more aggressively, right? And because this deck does draw a bunch of extra cards, we're not really needing the card draw from here, but we certainly can use the enter from here. Notice that I haven't really talked about the enter ability. It's just very, it's going to be way worse than you think it is. It's basically changing it so that way the opponent's next life burst is next life cloth is 75%, not a life burst. You're just doing rough math, basically. So all of these things help you get into push forward when you crush your own life cloth. Plus, all of them are actually pretty good on the opponent's turn as well, so we're striking a nice balance between of those things. There's also a thing where if we're really putting a ton of cards in our hand, which we are, by the way. I mean, we've got Yuka, which draws you cards, Yuka Panara, which draws you cards and lets you have a really cool turn 3 where you can go, I'm going to put down, most famously, I end up with Phalaris H2O, which is backbreaking, but sometimes you can go H2O, Exia, or Exia, H2O. That is actually backbreaking. But when you're drawing so many cards, Garden of Singularity ends up being really, really good. Especially if you have an active Garden of Singularity. You've got almost no cards in hand. The opponent keeps hitting you. You keep drawing a card off of this, even if you miss your life burst. Suddenly you end up with 4 cards in your hand. And once you end up with 4 cards in your hand, you can be like, yeah, I mean 3 cards in your hand is what you need, but 4 is comfortable and probably average. You'll end up with 4 cards in your hand, and I'll be like, yep, guard. You know, like you're always guarding, which is pretty good against the Tama decks. And also pretty good against Dasharana later down the line. Other than that, we're using the Atomic Backbone, right? Like, just to explain it for anyone who doesn't really know what it is. The goal is that you've got PAs, which use your hand size to kill Signies and open up lanes. You've got BPs, they do the same thing. You've got a ton of like H2s, which cause your opponents to discard randomly. H2Os, which is probably the single best card in Wixoss right now, in the main deck at least. But being blue also gives you access to some other stuff that the normal Atomic decks, which are generally speaking Black Center, can't afford, which is stuff like ZR. ZR is a great card. Generally speaking, that -3000 is the best it's ever been since it's finding homes killing Monomins all day long nowadays. -8000 is really good as well. And then you're going to basically, again, you have more enter, which means you have to have enter sinks, which drawing a card or your opponent discards a card at random as the enter effect by paying an enter is generally pretty good. You've got some more effects here as well. The negative 4,000 is actually really good against, again, those 3,000s we were talking about. So these are all solid options of basically just opening up tons of lanes, using that enter pretty efficiently. You've got Yuki here just to create some annoying boards. Modem, we've got, I think, 4 spells here, so 1 Modem just to kill a 3,000 Signy, basically. And yeah, you've got this really annoying board state that you can put out the 3/3/3s with Exia and H2Os. Basically, just have this really annoying board state on your opponent's turn that allows you to start winning games with that. Is very effective. So again, the goal here is take a very strong deck that already exists, but make it better by giving it plenty of enter, plenty of card draw, both things that the atomic decks really like to do, and tweak it a little bit so that way the life bursts will be more proactive rather than reactive. And then you end up with a pretty good Eldoria deck, if I do say so myself. Let me know how you guys like it. Again, Eldoria is actually one of my favorite Elrigs from the TV series. So if you guys like her too, try her out. Let me know how you guys think. Tell me if you're excited about her or if you run it a different way. Hopefully my reasoning makes sense. And I hope you guys may always flip life bursts.